Have you ever wondered why some days you feel like you could conquer the world and other days you feel like you can't even lift your warm-up sets? Welcome to episode 10 of No Stone Unturned. We're diving into the science of sleep and how it can be the ultimate game changer in your conquest for strength, health, and performance. You may have often heard the phrase, sleep is the most powerful drug, and for good reason. Yet in the world of hyper-productivity, of waking up at 4 in the morning, of being as hard as you can possibly be, it is often overlooked. But fear not. In this episode, we are going to shine a light on the critical role sleep plays in your strength gains, in your health, and in your performance. This series is brought to you by Perfect Sports, Canada's #1 supplement brand, now available worldwide. If you check the description, there's a code for 30% off if you live in Canada and a link to international distribution if you live anywhere else in the world. Not only were they the first ones to bring New Zealand whey protein to North America, but they make, in my opinion, the best pre-workout I've ever had, and you can get all of your dietary staples through Perfect Sports. At the end of each video, I'm going to provide a score based on 3 crucial aspects: personal experience, the scientific evidence, and the practicality for the average athlete. You'll be able to compare it to other dimensions in this series. And hopefully at the end, you get some practical takeaways to improve your own training. Before we get into the actual content, you guys have been begging me to talk about performance enhancing drugs. And to be honest with you, sleep is as close to a PED as anything else. It almost sets the foundation of anything else that you're going to do. From mental health effects to negative physical health consequences to performance consequences to emotional consequences, it is the most important thing that I can think of if you're trying to get your life on track, your weight on track, your health on track, anything in the physical or mental realm. If you're not sleeping as you should, it's basically going to go out the window. In this episode, I'm going to go over the 10 things that I've implemented to improve my sleep the most. Of course, I'm going to finish with a rating, and a lot of you have guessed. I think you can guess where this one's going to end up. When you do a quick Google search and you get a 10,000-foot overview, sleep is said to boost physical performance, prevent injuries, and boost mental health. If we dive one step deeper and we go to actual medical professionals at Johns Hopkins Medicine, they say chronic poor sleep may increase the likelihood of developing dementia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, even cancers of the breast, colon, ovaries, and prostate. If we dive into that a little bit, breast, prostate, and ovaries, we're talking about hormonal regulation. Your hormones will not be regulated. You'll have an uptick in cortisol. You'll have a downtick in testosterone, both for men and for women. And obviously, this is going to have dramatic negative consequences. I continue to bang on about this, and getting your blood work done is of the utmost importance. Check out the link in the description. I work with blokes to get my blood work done. That is a fantastic place to start, but you need that marker. Now, poor sleep can also affect the ability to function while performing daily tasks like working or driving. We have all felt that drowsiness. And the #1 cost to the North American economy is not absenteeism, but it's presenteeism, where you're at work, but you're actually not accomplishing a whole lot. When you look at studies, they say office workers in a general 8-hour day actually probably get only about 2 hours done. And largely this is because of presenteeism. You're just absent-minded, you're elsewhere because you just can't focus. You're not locked in. Now, there are, of course, times in your life where you don't have the ability to control that, but eventually you need to get to the point where it's something that becomes a non-negotiable priority, whether it's going to bed earlier or sleeping in later. One of these two has to happen. And the way that you know is if you can't get out of bed easily in the morning, or you feel fatigue in the early afternoon. Those are 2 cardinal signs that you're just simply not sleeping enough. When you do start to correct your sleep, as I have, there are always going to be obstacles. You're going to have the obstacle of a child, of work pressure, of potentially pressure from your partner to get up and do stuff on the weekends. And you have to find a routine, and you have to find things that are really easy, sustainable for you to do over the long run. I'm going to tell you a little bit about those now. The first, and the thing that makes a huge difference to me, is room temperature. Now, there's an ideal temperature for sleep. This will depend on individuals. It's very common for a female to want warmer temperatures and a male to want colder temperatures. And it does shake out that colder temperatures help you sleep better. We're going to talk in Celsius. Sorry to Americans, deal with it. So when it comes to temperature, it is extremely important that you're sleeping at a comfortable temperature and you're able to maintain that throughout the night, whether that's with a fan or an air conditioning system. We, for the most part, would just crack the door open, winter in Canada, cool down the room quite a bit. And the important thing is the room should be slightly cooler than you want it to be. We all know that cozy feeling underneath the cover when everything else is relatively cool. That is when you're gonna sleep the best and when it's gonna stay the best. The absolute peak that you could do if you want to improve the sleep temperature is if you can find one of those mattresses that have a dual temperature gauge on it. That's something that we're working on, but you can have a warmer bed for the female, which is more common. You could have a hotter, cooler side for the male, which again is more common. That way you can both be at the ideal temperature to sleep, but you should be just lower than you'd like to be in terms of the room temperature. The study here, the effects of ventilation and temperature on sleep quality and next day work performance. This is very small. It's only 10 healthy young adults, so we'll take it with a grain of salt, but they tested two temperatures, 24 degrees Celsius and 28 degrees Celsius. For those Americans, 24 degrees Celsius is, drumroll please, 75 Fahrenheit. So we're not talking freezing cold. Personally, I have it even a little bit lower than that. We set our house at 72 degrees. For me, that's when sleep becomes the best. Now, in this study, they say increased temperature and reduced ventilation both have negative effects on sleep quality. Of course, that has negative effects on next day work performance. There does need to be more subjects involved, but there's plenty of research around a slightly cooler temperature and improved sleep quality. That is the first thing that I've done to improve my sleep. Second, those of you who tell me that I look like Thum Thum from Spy Kids or Patrick from SpongeBob, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, yeah, my neck is huge. And one of the big problems that I have is that when I lie down, my chest comes up into my neck and it just becomes really hard to breathe. Virtually every pro strongman on the planet has a CPAP to get around this, continuous positive airway pressure. This helps me breathe through the night. It is a scary thought that I need a machine to breathe through the night. And part of the reason that I always say is just not healthy to do what I am doing, to push to the extreme in any facet of life or health or fitness. Now, we have a study here, improvement of mild sleep disorder breathing with CPAP compared with conservative therapy. I actually never been diagnosed with sleep apnea. I'm sure that I have it. I just snore so much that Ashley would always wake me up because I was waking her up. She would give me a nudge. I would then wake up multiple times throughout the night. That was the problem we were originally solving. So I don't believe that I have any severe form of sleep apnea. It is possible to die in the night if you have severe sleep apnea. But I just think it's something that has improved my sleep. Now, in this trial, they were looking at the effects of treatment with continuous positive airway pressure versus conservative therapy on well-being, mood, functional status with mild sleep disordered breathing, essentially a control group and a CPAP group. The conclusion here is that a beneficial effect of CPAP over conservative therapy was most evident among individuals without sinus problems and among subjects with hypertension or diabetes. Differential treatment responses were not related to the degree of positive baseline sleepiness. This suggests middle-aged snorers with relatively low levels of sleep apnea may benefit more from nasal CPAP than from less specific therapy directed at improving breathing during sleep. Now, we can take, again, this is one study, we can take it with a relative grain of salt, but there is evidence here to say there are people who need a CPAP and that helps them sleep better. Really, if you're not getting the oxygen during the night, there's no way that you're gonna have a good night's sleep. This is almost common sense, and I think it's hard to find really good, clear studies on it because it's just obvious. You need oxygen to be able to breathe, to survive, to get into deep REM sleep. So CPAP, that is number 2 for me. We got temperature, we got CPAP. We're moving on to electronics, the nightmare of every parent's come bedtime, because you're doing your best to take electronics away from kids. But there's one part of this in particular, which is the blue lights. Now, when I started looking into this, and I was doing No Stone Unturned as part of sleep and recovery, I saw blue light, I was looking into it, and I just thought, like, why do I have blue light in the first place? Why don't I just adapt myself to having no blue light ever? At a minimum, you need to be shutting off your blue light before 8 o'clock, okay? The sleep that you get before midnight is exponentially more beneficial than the sleep you get after midnight. Reason being, we have a circadian rhythm that's largely dependent on the sun. And for most people, In most parts of the world, the sun going down somewhere around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock makes the most sense. The further away we get from that circadian rhythm, the harder it is for us to sleep really well. So in this, what I've done, I've gone into my phone settings and I've just turned on night shift, which takes off all of the blue light. I've started that at 12 o'clock at noon and I've finished that at 11:59 a.m., i.e. I have 1 minute that my phone will have blue light showing. Otherwise, I have no blue light on my phone all day. When we go to the research, we have got this really good study here, systematic review and meta-analysis on interventions to reduce blue light exposure at night and their effects on sleep. This actually found that it didn't make that big of a difference. And this was only for people who were generally good sleepers in the first place. That being said, people who had other conditions like ADHD, bipolar disorder, insomnia, it is useful. Now, for me, once I spent about a day with my phone on night shift, I don't even notice it anymore. Other people will pick it up and think that it's weird and they have a hard time looking at it and the color's off. I don't even know. And even though the evidence might not say that it's hugely useful, it does nothing in my life. It changes nothing about my life and could have a benefit. So if the downside is zero and the upside could be something, for me, it's just a non-negotiable. And that's why blue light was number 3. Number 4 is a dark room. This is particularly important if you're looking to sleep past 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun's gonna be naturally coming up. This makes it even more important for you to be going to bed around 9 or 10 at night because the sun is gonna come up, and unless you have perfect blackout curtains, floor to ceiling, covering the entire window, your room is naturally gonna start to light up. We have curtains, we've got curtains that block out the light, but our room still lights up in the morning. And so as much as we did our best to make the room as dark as possible, I just prioritize sleeping when it's dark outside. And that's what I do my best to get done because we don't have to worry about the room being super dark. When it comes to the research, we've got association between exposure to light at night, LAN, and sleep problems, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Again, this almost goes without saying, but the conclusions here are findings support the detrimental effects of light at night exposure on sleep. Maintaining bedroom darkness at night may be a feasible measure to reduce the prevalence of sleep problems. Future studies, blah, blah, blah. They say it is useful. If you've ever tried to sleep on with a light on all night, it is definitely not useful. If you're scared of the dark and you've got a little night light, that will have a small negative impact on your ability to sleep well. Of course, we have these psychological elements where maybe you prefer a light to be on or something to that effect. A baby monitor, for example, that's something where that shines light all night, but you don't really have an option. You still have to do that. So, dark room is number 4. Number 5, this is going to surprise those of you who follow me closely. Number 5 is caffeine. A few weeks back in No Stone Unturned around health, we talked about caffeine consumption. And honestly, personally, I'm a non-responder to caffeine. I could have a cup of coffee and go straight to bed, no problem. I don't get any energy kick from it whatsoever. And I think I was chasing that. And I think I was trying to chase it and chase and chase it. I was around 1,500 milligrams of caffeine a day at my most, and it really wasn't giving me energy. I still think I felt the crash from it, but it really didn't make that much of an impact. So I've limited my caffeine as much as possible. The general advice is limit your caffeine in the afternoon and evening. Personally, I will have altered state pre-workout and that's it. That's the only caffeine that I'll have during the day. I will have rain, maybe in place of altered state sometimes, but those two, they're the only things that I'll do for caffeine, and it's only around my workouts. I have put my masculinity to the side and I drink decaf coffee now. It's just, I'm dealing with it. It's gonna have positive effects on my blood pressure, but you also don't need to worry about the timing of your caffeine if you reduce your total caffeine intake, and that will definitely have an impact on your sleep. One thing about caffeine that people don't realize is that it is one of the few substances that we ingest that can cross the blood-brain barrier. It interacts directly with your brain, which is really, really powerful, and I think understated a lot of the time. When it comes to the research, we've got one here that is a meta-analysis, as we like, the effect of caffeine on subsequent sleep. Now, the objective, they say, the consumption of caffeine in response to insufficient sleep may impair the onset and maintenance of subsequent sleep. The systematic review and meta-analysis investigated the effect of caffeine on the characteristics of nighttime sleep with the intent to identify the time after which caffeine should not be consumed prior to bedtime. The conclusion here was that coffee should be consumed at least 8 to 9 hours prior to bedtime, and pre-workout should be consumed at least 13 hours prior to bedtime. That's pre-workout with a 217 milligram serving of caffeine, which most these days have 300. The results of the present study provide evidence-based guidance for the appropriate consumption of caffeine to mitigate the deleterious effects on sleep. 13 hours. I promise you, none of you watching this, I don't care if this is seen by 100 million people, nobody is having pre-workout 13 hours away from going to bed. You'd have to be working out at like 7 in the morning. Okay, well, fuck, maybe some people are. Some people are. You get my point. 13 hours is an extremely long time. And that's only 217 milligrams. Now, caffeine, of course, has a half-life. It sticks around in your body longer than you would expect. But really, the conclusion of this is that you shouldn't have caffeine if you're looking to prioritize your sleep. You can have a non-stim or a lower stim version of a pre-workout. You could have a lower caffeine content of rain. You could have a rain storm, for example. But it's something that you should treat with respect and should be very careful with. I think it's much like sleep quality and duration. Sometimes you can't control it, but it should be something that's on your mind. I've had a very big life event take place, which was the incredibly lucky experience of having a child come into the world. She is now 2 months old, and that comes, of course, with some sleep issues. They do not sleep through the night. It's not possible for them. They're not made to be that way at first, unfortunately. And as those of you who have children know, some of those nights can be extremely long. In this, I am very lucky with my wife, because in the end, we just have to operate as a team. And part of my job on the team is to go compete and to be able to do what I do for work. And sleeping is a major part of that. It's not something that I could just give up and put to the side for the months leading into World's Strongest Man. So the reality is, that's her job. Ashley is up during the night. She is taking care of the baby so that I can sleep. Have there been a couple of nights where I've been up and helping? Of course. But as a general rule, I am in bed getting the sleep that I need to be able to perform. This is not a situation that everyone would accept, not a situation that everyone would be happy to deal with. But thankfully, she is as hardworking as I am, meaning that we both know there's a pill right now that needs to be swallowed. She swallows the sleep side. I swallow the beating my body to absolute shit side. And in the end, hopefully we can create the lives for ourselves that we're looking for. Now, there is actually a study here that we found, the effect of room acoustics on sleep quality of healthy sleepers. The results of these showed that under conditions of equal sleep efficiency, a significant increase in deep sleep was determined in acoustically isolated room in comparison to 2 other sleep locations. Meaning that our baby is not in our room. That is not how we do it. At first, Ashley and the baby had a totally separate room. Now she's sleeping back in the bedroom with me. She's got the baby monitor quiet on her side of the bed to minimize the amount of extra noise. And she just gets up when the baby makes noise. The baby's far enough away that we can't hear her. You can't hear her without the monitor. It's not something that's a regular interruption to my sleep. So we've been really fortunate to be able to control that. One other thing we've done is put a white noise machine in our room. This drowns out any noise from the outside, and it also helps our dogs to not react to the noise and create their own noise themselves. So generally speaking, the only people who hear the baby fussing are the baby and Ashley, and that is our setup for right now. Pop a comment, just say thank you, Ashley, for helping Mitchell to be the best athlete he can be. Just do that for me. Appreciate it. Next up, number 8. We're talking hot and cold before bed. Now, I've been doing this. We did an episode of No Stone Unturned on it. I got a lot of criticism for not going full into ice cold water, but I stood outside in the winter in my boxers for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. It's Canadian winter. It's close enough. Just chill out, please. But I would do that before bed, and that was actually the thing that I found most helpful in doing the cold. I found getting cold before bed was one of the nicest feelings. You get in, you get cozy and get warm. I don't know if this, at the time, I didn't know if this had actual evidence behind it, but it's something that made me feel really sleepy and tired once I got into a warm, cozy bed. There is a study here, the effects of cold water immersion, the amount and quality of sleep obtained by elite cyclists during a simulated hill climbing tour. I did not do cold water, I did cold air. We've presented other studies that cold air and cold water show equal benefit or no benefit. So we're just using them as the same thing. Bear with me. The conclusion here is that paired sample t-test statistics, don't worry about it, revealed no difference in the amount and quality of sleep obtained by elite cyclists between condition. Sleep latency was shorter in the cold water immersion condition compared to the placebo condition. I don't know how you would placebo cold water. You're pretty aware when you're in cold water, but anyway. With the exception of sleep latency, sleep-wake behaviors were similar between cold water immersion and placebo conditions. Translated to normal English, it's saying that people who got cold before sleep tended to fall asleep a little bit faster. Otherwise, everything was the exact same. And this is the evidence that we found a lot with cold water therapy. If you want to check that out, we'll put the link in the description. But moving on to number 9, movements and general movements. I've talked many times about how our total exercise volume as strongman is relatively low. We actually don't even meet the baseline guideline for human being movements according to the ACSM in America, like CSEP in Canada, like the governing bodies over in Australia, ESSA is what it's called. They all say you need a certain amount of movement, and we just don't hit that in our general day-to-day lives as strongmen. But I make it a priority to get my steps in, to get my general movements in, whether that's walks with the dogs, with the baby, by myself, on the treadmill, hopping on the bike, anything just to get moving for at least 30 minutes a day of continuous movement. That has been really, really important for a lot of things for me, for a mental health perspective, from a physical health perspective, from a general well-being perspective, but it has helped me sleep as well. To talk you through my entire sleep routine, traditionally, I would have my last meal. I would come down, I'd walk on the treadmill or ride the bike for 10 minutes. Then I would go straight outside, get cold, then brush my teeth and head to bed. There's one other thing I do when I go outside in the cold. We'll go over that in a second. But there's a study here, exercise training improves sleep quality in middle-aged and older adults with sleep problems, a systematic review. Now, it's a bit ambiguous. Do I have a sleep problem or do I not? I have sleep apnea, so maybe that's a problem, but it's rectified, so maybe it's not. Regardless, the conclusion here said that participation in an exercise training program has moderately positive effects on sleep quality in middle-aged and older adults. Physical exercise could be an alternative or a complementary approach to existing therapies for sleep problems. One of those things, small impacts, but if you make multiple small impacts, it takes you to a very different place, as we're experiencing and exploring in No Stone Unturned. This takes us to number 10. And this is probably the most controversial when it comes to the sleep aids that I've been using. Definitely 100% legal in Canada, all kosher, not legal everywhere in the world. You're probably aware if it is or if it's not, and this is THC. THC is the psychoactive component in marijuana. CBD has gotten a lot of attention, but personally for me, CBD, it doesn't feel like it does a whole lot for me. With THC, even when I'm most sympathetically stimulated, it will put me to sleep in a matter of minutes. I remember I was at a bachelor party. I didn't want to drink. I think the health consequences from alcohol are too high to do that on any sort of regular, even semi-regular basis. So I reject drinking for the most part as much as I can. But when it comes to marijuana, I think it's much, much safer depending on the way that you consume it. But I was at a bachelor party. I had it. It was like 10 o'clock. They were going out to the bars. I woke up and everyone was gone. And I was just like, that is the effect it has on me. And I'm just using that to my advantage as best as possible. Important disclaimer here. If you are just looking to be as healthy as you can be, is it something you should be doing? I'm not convinced that it is. If you're someone who has trouble getting to sleep, is it something that you should be doing? I think you should try it and give it a crack and see how it works for you. Because in the end, if you take it in forms that are not harmful to you or limit the harm to you, I think the benefit that you're going to get from a good quality sleep outweighs the risks that you're taking in ingesting any sort of psychoactive drug. Now, we'll go to the research for this. My personal experience is so strong that for me, either the research is going to support it or I'm a total outlier because it is incredibly useful. When we actually dive into the research, there's not as much as I would hope. Not as much as I would hope to give it as a blanket overview recommendation for the average person. That being said, we do have one study here that's called Around the Clock Oral THC Effects on Sleep in Male Chronic Daily Cannabis Smokers. To be very clear, I in no way support doing this on a daily basis throughout the entire day. It's just, that is not a way to function. That is not a way to live your life. I'm talking about low, moderate doses before you go to bed. That for me has been extremely helpful. Now, the results in this showed higher evening THC concentrations were significantly associated with shorter sleep latency, which is what I'm reporting. I fall asleep very, very quickly, less difficulty falling asleep, and more daytime sleep the following day. In contrast, the duration of calculated and self-reported nighttime sleep decreased slightly, but significantly during the study. Now it says here, the duration of calculated and self-reported nighttime sleep decreased slightly. It said it decreased by 4 minutes per night, so I think we can call that a non-meaningful result. 4 minutes is not really that much when we're talking about an 8 to 9 hours sleep, but it does help you get to sleep very quickly. We know that increased sympathetic drive causes a difficulty in the shut off of the sympathetic system and a difficulty to stimulate the parasympathetic system. So this can just take you into that parasympathetic state and allow you to sleep. Is it optimal for your health? I don't know. Is it helpful with performance? For me, absolutely. Draw your own conclusions, test things out for yourself. This is not advice in any way, shape, or form. This is just something I've been doing to help myself. Now, to the final score. I've talked about my personal experience. We've gone over the scientific evidence. Now, sleep. I think sleep is the closest performance-enhancing drug that is approved by WADA, approved by everyone, that is absolutely 100% healthy for you. And that's why sleep unequivocally ranks #1 for me. You should be structuring your life around sleeping high quality, high quantity, as much as you possibly can, and your production, your mental health, your physical health will all improve for it. Experiment for yourself. I've given you my top 10 tips that I've done to improve my sleep during this period of No Stone Unturned. I will continue to do these moving forward, except maybe when it's not competition season, I'll help a little bit more during the night with the baby. Let me know what you do to help your sleep. Do you agree that sleep is #1 if we're talking about being a high-performing athlete or even a moderately high-performing athlete? And it's up there for your general health as well. Let me know what you think. Make the conclusions yourself. Check them out. As per usual, lift heavy, be kind. Thank you very much for watching. The series is almost over. Let us know what you might think would be left on the list. We've got one really, really high up there. Let's see. Take your guesses. Lift heavy, be kind. We'll catch you next time.